Welcome, Xbox Nation. I am your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and you are here for the bonus episode of the Xbox Factor podcast. But I am not here alone. I'm here with our co-host that keeps the cogs rolling in this bonus episode each and every Tuesday. Zemi Games, welcome back to the program, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me, Boom. Man, dude, I am still just like falling in love with my Series X, man. I know I need to get some work done. I know it so badly. I need to do some YouTube videos and work on some other little things I've been working on. But man, Valhalla just keeps bringing me back. You know, once I think I'm out, they pull me back in. I think that's a Godfather 2 reference. But yeah, man, I'm absolutely loving my Series X. I'm loving these games. I can't wait for Cyberpunk. There's just so much goodness, on Xbox now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's certainly a great time to be an Xbox gamer, and we have a loaded show now. If you might be noticing, wait a second, Boom, where is the rest of these massive panel that you usually put together? And talking with Zemi, we wanted to kind of bring back the two-man show for the bonus episode specifically. Thursdays are not going to change. That crew, or that ragtag crew that we have, is going to remain intact, and you will get that Thursday show each and every Thursday, not this upcoming Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. And I'll be going into that momentarily about how the schedule is going to change only for next week. But, when I started this particular program, it was with the Welsh Gamer. And obviously he has taken a bit of a sabbatical, and he is still out handling family business. And I can't say for sure when we're going to get the Welsh Gamer back, but when he does in fact come back, we're going to try and get him onto the Tuesday program, because for the foreseeable future, I've come to the realization that the Xbox show is my favorite show to do each and every week. Obviously, because I'm an Xbox gamer first, I get a chance to work with Zemi twice a week, and that is also one of the main reasons why I enjoy doing these programs, because he is also a diehard Xbox player. So what we're going to do is, if, like we were talking in the pregame before we went live, if Microsoft, let's say, for instance, was to buy the world, we would do a grand show for that. We'd have as many people as we can get on that program that day. But for the foreseeable future, the Tuesday bonus shows are going to be going back old school, where it's going to be me and Zemi Games, and we're kind of happy about it because we get to load up the show with a lot of topics. We get to change the conversation quite often in a 2-hour program. And, again, we do enjoy working with each other. So if the Welsh Gamer does find the time to be here and he can come back, he will come back on this particular program. And Thursdays will be reserved to the panel that I built for the regular episode of the Xbox Factor podcast. So let's get into one of the bits and bytes of the show. And the first one is what we're actually playing. What is really taking up our time on our new consoles? And Zemi, I know that you have a lot to say on this particular topic. What has had your attention the last 4 or 5 days since the launch of the Series X?
This is a very, very easy question, because it really has mostly been Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I am absolutely loving that game. You and me, we were talking before we went live on this show, and I've fallen in love with this game. I wasn't the biggest fan of Odyssey for reasons I've made publicly on this show and a lot of other places as well. Wasn't a fan of Odyssey, but Valhalla has absolutely just stolen my heart away. I am thoroughly invested into this game. Last weekend, I thought I was going to just do nothing but Call of Duty. And I did play quite a bit of Call of Duty, but I just kept finding myself back, wanting to go a Viking, right? It really is just such a fantastic game. The story is amazing. The game is massive, man. I mean, it is just a huge game. I think it's probably, it could easily rival the size of The Witcher 3, if you ask me. But so I've been playing a lot of Valhalla, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I also have been playing the new Call of Duty. multiplayer with a bunch of people, in the community, just going through playing team deathmatch, search and destroy. And I haven't gotten to play the single player yet because I'm wanting to beat Valhalla and then move on to the Call of Duty single player. And then, after those games are done, I think I'm probably going to be playing Call of the Sea, man. Call of the Sea is a game that really, really is exciting me. And I think that comes out December 1st. And then I'll be on to Cyberpunk, of course. But as of right now, really, I've actually only played 3 games on my Xbox Series X. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the new Call of Duty game, and then I played like less than 2 minutes of Fallout 4 because I wanted to see what the load times were like. So I don't have a lot of experience with multiple games on my Xbox yet, but I have a lot of experience with very few games. I think I have like 30 hours into Valhalla right now.
Wow. I mean, listen, I'll say this. I've actually been surprisingly getting some gaming in, and obviously, when you produce 4 shows per week, their sacrifices have to be made. And trust me, I'm not complaining. I enjoy doing these shows. I enjoy producing my own content, and giving something for the people to listen to. And the fact that there's an audience that people actually want to hear what we have to say, Zemi, is always tremendously humbling. But I have been putting this Series X through its paces. I've played a lot of Dirt 5, which I gotta be honest with you, was never really a dirt guy, quote unquote. And I am really, 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 really enjoying it. Now, granted, it is not Forza Horizon. It's not. It is what you would expect in a dirt game, but I will say that the car models look fantastic. The terrain looks fantastic. But what impressed me immediately was the control. I mean, it is so incredibly fun to just drive these cars through the mud, and I don't even know what else to say. So I've been putting some time into that. I got almost a dozen hours into Valhalla. I just left Norway. I'm a bit of a completist, so every time I see something on the map, I have to run towards it. I don't know if it's an undiagnosed ADD, but I really do like collecting things. This is probably why the Ubisoft formula works for me. I purchased Cold War. I have not played it as of yet because, my God, there's only so much time you have in a day. I did beat Bright Memory, which wasn't long, maybe about 2 or 3, maybe 3 hours, give or take. And of course, I'm waiting for Infinite. That's going to come in January. I played some Tetris Effect, which is freaking fantastic. My God, folks, if you have Xbox Game Pass and you have not downloaded this game, it is not your dad's Tetris from the Game Boy of 1985, whatever. It is really an incredible experience. I'm absolutely loving it. And that's what I've been putting my time into. I'm closing in on 300,000 gamer score. I'm hopefully we'll be able to amass that by the end of the year. I don't know if I'm going to hit it or not, but I'm certainly working to get that. But yeah, that's folks. That's what we've been playing. Obviously, as we wait for people to funnel in, we're closing in on 200 people here. Listen. Tell us what you're playing. You don't have to throw a super chat in there. Just, give your opinion about what has been occupying your time, and we'll give you shout outs accordingly. But, there is a second topic, and this one wasn't in the original show notes. And I do want to get into it with Zemi, and I want to get into it with, we have a super chat just came in. Zopher N drops a very generous $5 super chat. He says, "Hey, Boom and Zemi, will you play Cyberpunk day one or wait for the Series X optimized version?" Zemi, that's a pretty damn good question. What are you going to do, bro?
I don't see how you couldn't play Cyberpunk day one. I mean, I for sure am gonna have to play it day one. It sucks how it won't be optimized, whenever I play it, and I don't know if whenever it did get optimized, I don't know when that's going to happen. And I honestly, I feel that Cyberpunk is going to be one of those games that once you beat it, you're probably good on it for at least another year or two. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to play it or ever get to it being optimized, but I'm definitely going to have to play that game day one. I don't see a way around it.
I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I think I'm going to have to experience it for myself on day one. I know people don't want to hear this. I just, as much as I love CD Projekt Red, and I think that they're probably one of the most consumer-friendly, talented developers probably in the entire world. Like I would even dare say that I think that they even surpass, teams like, for instance, Naughty Dog. I would put them above Naughty Dog. I put them over Sony Santa Monica. And again, that's not a dig at Sony. I'm just saying that if I had to pick who I think is the most talented and who really knows what the pulse of the community, it would be them. So, but I have a man. I don't even want to say it out loud. I have a feeling they're going to delay it again. I really do. I don't think that's been enough. There's enough time from when it was supposed to come out on the 19th. To hit that December, I believe it was 15th of December. Is that what it is?
10th of December, I think.
10th. Okay. Well, whenever it is supposed to come out in December, I don't necessarily know if that is enough time. So, I mean, I know that the next gen versions are running extremely well based on what we've heard. I think that their issue is the last generation consoles, where that seems to be giving them the most trouble. I don't want to sound like a prude, or even, or because I know there's a lot of people that could not get their hands on a Series X, S, or PS5 for a lot of reasons, because, everybody wants one and it's the holidays and COVID-19. But if they delay it again to obviously get the last gen versions up to par, should they release the next gen versions? And I don't know. I don't know if that would be fair. I don't know if they would want to do that. But listen, I would love to see them release this on the 15th or the 10th in December. I just don't think they're going to do it. And to be honest with you, I would hate this game to launch and have problems, because that's not really their blueprint when you talk about games from CD Projekt Red. It is really their bread and butter to release quality products that work day one. So I don't know what is going to happen, Zemi, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, for crying out loud, Thanksgiving is next week, folks. And of course, there is a lot to be thankful for, more so your health before video games, obviously, but we'll get into that much later. 2 super chats came in. One from Mac Diesel. Mac Diesel, thanks so much for being here. He drops an outstanding $2 super chat and says, "Boom, when you say infinite, are you talking about Halo?" I don't know if is that from did I mention infinite today?
I don't know.
I don't think I did.
I know that you mentioned bright memory earlier whenever you were talking about
games,
I'm not sure.
Yes. I think that's okay. So when I said infinite, because I did say the word infinite, I'm talking about bright memory infinite coming out, not Halo Infinite coming out. Because if it was coming out in January, that would be dope. But I don't think we're going to see that until the end of next year. Viper XT, a very generous friend of the show, he drops an outstanding $10 super chat and says, "Played through Bright Memory, tied out a few OG BC games, have been bouncing between Fortnite, not bad, NHL, and the 13 remake. How is that, dude? Once I'm done with the 13 remake, I will move on to Watch Dogs, then AC Valhalla." That's not a bad list, dude. But you know what? I do want to move on to the other bits and bytes section before we get into the meaty topics. And this one, again, this was a last minute entry into the show. And I was talking with Zemi prior to going live, and I'm starting to see this conversation rage on social media. And I think it's starting to gain a little bit of ground. And what I'm referring to is the conversations, not only on the social media aspect with us, but the gaming media. And for some reason, when talking about the Xbox Series X controller versus the DualSense before the PlayStation 5, it seems because Sony's, I guess, change to their controller, it seems to be getting more of the conversation. And I'm a little perplexed by that, because look, the bottom line, and where I'm going with this, is this. The DualSense controller, in my personal opinion, is the finest Sony PlayStation controller to date. Now, you can take that and, run with it or what. I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying it's the best PlayStation controller to date for a lot of reasons. And I'm talking about you having to blow on it. I'm talking about the speaker being in the front of it, or the fact that the light was removed so your battery doesn't drain as much. Just the weight of it, the haptic triggers. I know there are a lot of people that are like completely head over heels. I don't think that they're that big of a deal. I think that they're okay. I think it does give you some tension in when you're pulling the trigger. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm enjoying it, but I could easily just shut it off and it would make no never mind to me. The reason why I bring up this topic isn't to try and to pull light away and throw shade onto their controller. No, that's not it at all. My problem, and Zemi, I want to get your opinion on this, is one of the running conversations is, well, the Xbox Series X controller just feels like the Xbox One controller. I actually don't see that as being a problem. As a matter of fact, I would even disagree with that because it's a little bit smaller, so it's more contoured to your hands, and the grips on the back of it make it so it doesn't slide out of your hand. I think that the advancements on the controller itself, on the design, are freaking fantastic, and as well as the share button being a big deal. Now, that's something that Sony had in advance for the PlayStation 4, which, of course, I've talked about in the positive way because I like the share button. So this is a great addition, but I just find it odd that people discount the quality of the Xbox Series X controller simply because it's just another Xbox controller. And that's where, of course, where I disagree. I think that they made enough changes on the controller to make it even better. Now, and that's the thing. It was already the best controller in gaming. And I don't care how you slice that up. There were no better controllers than the Xbox One X controllers. That's the reality. And the fact that they made that controller even better and that people are discounting what they've done just simply because Sony had to change their dual shock to the dual sense is a little preposterous and a bit of a head scratcher. Zemi, what are your thoughts on this conversation that for some reason a lot of these multimedia outlets are discounting what Microsoft and the design team did for the Series X controller versus the DualSense for the PlayStation 5?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the media goes, the media they're always going to, want to talk about, the like the trendy thing, right? Or, and typically the trendy thing is the most non-traditional kind of thing. And PlayStation changed their controller more than Xbox did. We could talk probably for the duration of the podcast of why PlayStation needed to do that or sought to do that more above what Microsoft wanted to do with their Xbox controller. But ultimately, PlayStation, they changed their controller more. They added in a lot of features that, to me, I think those features are kind of gimmicky, like the blowing into the controller and like the tension on the triggers. I think that that's a little gimmicky, but that's just my opinion. And the whole conversation about controllers or consoles or even games, is very subjective on what one person likes and what the other person dislikes or whatever, right? So, from that point of view, I think it makes sense for the media to be making a little bit more of a deal out of PlayStation having more changes to their controller than Xbox. But I don't think that diminishes anything that Xbox did with their controller. I think Xbox took an amazing controller and improved it, enhanced it, right? Kind of similar with how Xbox did its dashboard, right? It's familiar but enhanced, right? It's familiar but it's better. I love the Xbox controller. I love the like the grips on, the back and the side of the controller. I love how they contorted it to make it a little bit smaller and fit in the hands a little bit better. I love the share button. I actually find myself using the share button a lot more, often on my Series X than I did my Xbox One. And, I really like what they did with the D-pad as well. I like how it clicks and it makes that, that loud clicking noise. Some people don't like that, but I also, for PC gaming, I also like mechanical keyboards. So I just like, I like sounds. It makes me happy. But I think ultimately, a big thing that a lot of gamers kind of just don't really recognize or realize is that the Xbox controller is no better than the PlayStation controller, and the PlayStation controller is no better than the Xbox controller. And I know that that statement's not going to make me any friends, but at the end of the day, it's all subjective, right?
Correct. Yes.
I prefer the Xbox controller. That's me. My biggest complaint with the PlayStation controller, once again, this is just me, subjective. I don't like both the analogs being right next to each other. I like the analog placement a lot more on the Xbox controller, and ultimately, I've liked how the Xbox controller fits in my hands a lot more than I've liked previous iterations of of PlayStation controllers. But I think both devices, both controllers, serve their function. They will both play video games. They both work. And just depending on what you like more, use that one, right? And
Yep.
if controllers are the most important thing to you, having a PlayStation controller is the most important thing to you, then buy a PlayStation. If or if you like the Xbox controller more, than buy an Xbox, right? But I really like what both companies are doing. They're doing very different things. A lot of the features that are on the Sony controller do seem a little bit gimmicky to me. I don't know how many third-party developers are really going to take advantage of a lot of the features that controller has. But ultimately, it's just a controller.
You know what, dude? That's a great point, and I agree. And I think that again, what you said is spot on. It is subjective. So if you find comfort in the Series X controller, then great. If you find comfort in the PlayStation 5 controller, great. For me, I find both controllers to be good. I don't think I'm going to get on my soapbox and start screaming that one is better than the other because I own both consoles. Thankfully, my PlayStation 5 is still working. It is in rest mode. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little nervous, but I'm not playing Spider-Man right now because obviously there's just too much on the Xbox to play. And I will get to the PlayStation 5. I did play some Astrobot and a few other games. Thank God it's still working. We talked about that last night on Primetime Gaming about the list of defects that are coming out of the PlayStation 5 camp. It's not good. But getting back to the controllers, I do believe they're worthy of a conversation. I do believe that that because Sony went so different, that I can see the allure of people in the gaming media wanting to talk about it more because it's so drastically different than the DualShock 4. With that said, I think that there is a case to be made that just because the Series X controller is slightly smaller and very similar in many aspects to its Xbox One X controller, that it should not, that in my opinion should receive the same amount of conversation. Viper XT drops another outstanding and very generous $10 super chat and says the latency improvements in the Series X controller is just amazing. That's a great point. It's fantastic. Yes. He says it's a game changer in itself. The only reason it's not getting as much praise is because it was already good. So yeah, see, that's exactly my point. We have Rain G4. Hey, Rain, thanks so much for hanging out with us. You are always here, and I definitely appreciate your support. He drops an outstanding $2 super chat. Oh, he says the DualShock slogan, blow me.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. That's the funniest one of the day, dude. That is really good.
And just to add in on this whole controller, kind of talk and Xbox didn't really change all that much. And it may appear like that, but I guarantee you, Xbox put a lot more work in these controllers, as well as PlayStation. They put a lot more work in these controllers than what a lot of people would think, from designing it, making 3D models, testing, doing, market research, designing the software for these controllers, the updates, the firmware, all that different stuff. I mean, even with Xbox, contouring, the controller a little bit, changing out the D-pad, adding in a share button, just all like the little minor things that they did to improve this controller. Even with them looking and feeling so minor, the amount of work that it took teams, probably years to create this controller. I mean, it's, it may seem like a minor thing to us, but it's a massive thing to those teams that put in those years of work to create these changes and these adaptations of this controller. You know what I mean? It's,
Yeah.
it's about like saying, well, the Xbox adaptive controller is pretty basic. All they did was just make some wires and some buttons and just, whatever, just sling it together, right? But not really, because it took years of development and research and figuring out how to do that the best possible way. So even though, the Xbox controller may seem, less improved or less changed, it still took a lot of work and a lot of effort to put forth, this controller the way that it is right now, and to make those changes happen, in the controller. I mean, undoubtedly PlayStation, quite clearly probably spent more time and money on their controller, but that doesn't diminish the work and the time that it took Microsoft to put into their controller. Boom, you there? And I think Boom went to go get a package.
No, I actually muted myself. I don't know why I muted myself. That's so ridiculous. Keeping the conversation going with the controller. Good friend of the show, good friend of the community, Kirby Zero Louise says. And speaking of controllers, still super glad that Xbox got 8-bit DO on board with making a special version of the SN30 Pro for xCloud. You know what? That's interesting. I didn't even see that. That's pretty dope. I'm definitely going to check that out for sure. Yeah, their controls are pretty dope. I have to admit that, Kirby, definitely. But listen, before we move on to one of the massive topics, I kind of want to, just talk about what Christmas with Boom is going to be. That is going to be the next time that Mrs. Boomstick and I are going to be doing a massive giveaway. And Christmas with Boom obviously is is what I'm trying to figure out when we're going to do that show, because Christmas Eve we may not have a show because it's Christmas Eve and it's going to be a very hectic time. I'm looking for the Christmas with Boom is probably, we're probably going to set that up for the 18th of December. And what Christmas with Mr. and Mrs. Boomstick is and has been the last couple of years is we put a bunch of money away and we try to give as much away as possible, very much like Santa and Mrs. Claus do. Last year, we were able to give away $500 worth of prizes, and we're trying to outdo that. Now, I don't know how much farther we're going to be able to outdo that, but if you are, I kind of want to just give people the heads up of how this is happening with super chats, with, of course, the channel membership and Patreon support. We can do these massive giveaways. We just did a $2,000 giveaway, and thankfully, and folks, listen, I normally don't talk about this stuff on the air because it's behind the scenes stuff. The stress that I was under to get these prizes to everyone was immense. I've listened to some of my shows last week, and even though I was into the week of the launch, you can hear it in my voice. At least I could, because I knew what was going on behind the scenes. I'm happy to report that not only did everyone get their games, not only did everyone get their two controllers, the two consoles have arrived to the winners. They've posted it on Twitter. They are playing their consoles as we speak, and now I can sit back and take a breather because it is. Wow, it's a lot of stress to get these, to get people their prizes, and thank God it all worked out. So yeah, so this year we're gonna try and outdo what we did last year, and that's how we're paying for it. So if you are a Patreon member, if you are a channel supporter, and or you drop a super chat in starting this week, we are going to take every one of those names. We're going to put them into a picker, and the prizes right now, what we have on tap is a Robot White Xbox Series X controller, We also have a DualSense controller, and we're going to try and add $500 worth of digital gift cards and games to that list as well. So again, just to give you the heads up on what is happening with that. If you're interested, you can always, and you're not sure of how to enter. Again, it's one of those three things: drop a super chat in, become a Patreon member if you're not already a member, and of course a channel membership, which is $5 a month, and that gets you automatically entered into the contest. And of course, the more that you, if you're part of all three of those things, you get 3 entries. And on that day, on the December 18th, we'll be picking the winners live and be getting those codes and gifts out to you as soon as possible. Hopefully, they'll be able to get there before Christmas. But I do want to move on to the next topic there, Zemi. And this one's a bit of a big one. And it's one that I'm very happy to talk about on this particular show. You know, considering 2020 has been such a horrendous year for planet Earth, not just one particular region of the world, it has been outstanding for gamers, but more so it has been outstanding for Microsoft. And when you look back, Zemi, all the way to the Game Awards 2019, it has been nothing short of an onslaught of big news bombs and PR for Team Microsoft and Team Xbox, unlike anything we've seen before. Now, with the launch of the Xbox Series X and S, it appeared and now has been confirmed that the Xbox was on path to have the biggest launch in brand history. And according to the Xbox Wire article that I pulled that was published on Friday the 13th by Liz Hamren, who is the CVP of gaming and gaming experiences and platforms, she confirmed that, and I'm going to read verbatim what she wrote in the article. Thanks to you, the launch of the Xbox Series X and S is now the most successful debut in our history. While we missed the emotional spark of being together with you in person, it was incredible to celebrate a new generation of gaming with the millions of hours celebrations live. Let me start over. It was incredible to celebrate a new generation of gaming with the millions on our celebration live stream and everyone who participated in our global launch across 40 countries. Your support and what you have accomplished in the first 24 hours of launch inspired us to demonstrate the connective power of play is more important now than ever. More new consoles sold than any previous generation, with Xbox Series S adding the highest percentage of new players for any one Xbox console at launch. More games played, a total of 3,594 different games spanning 4 generations, setting a record for the most games ever played during an Xbox console launch. Next gen means more ways to discover and play and this is where, Zemi, we get into how important Game Pass is to the future of Xbox. Apparently 70% of new and old Xbox Series X and S consoles are attached to new and existing Xbox Game Pass members, which is insane when you consider the number. Now, as of today, we do have a number of 1.4 million consoles sold. That is a record when you compare it to 2013, where they just missed out on 800,000 consoles sold with the Xbox One. Zemi, these are a lot of stats, some obviously more important than others. 1.4 million consoles shipped. Now, I know that there's going to be some people in the chat that are going to detract from that. Well, it's only 1.4 million. That's not a lot, Boom. It is when you talk about what Sony shipped, and we don't know what Sony shipped because they're not sharing that with everyone. And considering how many people missed out on a PlayStation 5 as opposed to how many people missed out on the Series X and S, it appears that Sony may have shipped maybe half of what Microsoft shipped. Now, again, that's my speculation. That's my opinion. I have been looking, I've been waiting, and I have not been able to find any numbers on what Sony shipped. But I did get what numbers Microsoft shipped, and currently it's over 1.4 million consoles. For you, Zemi, is that a successful launch considering what we know?
Yeah, no, for sure it's a successful launch. And I mean here's the thing, right? So, 1.4 million might have sold, but that is more a testament of they were able to make 1.4 million units in a COVID ridden, time, right?
Yes. Yep.
Because if they had more, they would most certainly have sold more. Same with PlayStation. If they had more units, they would have most definitely sold more because, I saw a lot of people pre-ordering, the Xbox that did not get one. More than half the people that were waiting outside my line, did not get one. More than half the people that walked into the GameStop whenever I walked into there, did not get an Xbox console. So, I wouldn't be surprised to know that that number would have been, doubled, possibly tripled if they had the supply of the units. But overall, it is absolutely amazing, how in today's world that Xbox was able to manufacture and deliver so many of these units to 40 different countries. I mean, that is amazing. Now, the 70% of users on, the series consoles being subscribed to Game Pass, that is an impressive statistic, but I don't really think it's very, very shocking in the least bit, because if you think about it, most of the people who ran out to get the Series X or the Series S, they're first time adopters or they're hardcore fans, right? And both of those demographics are kind of going to be the most likely, candidates and the candidates that just kind of make the most sense for them to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass or already be subscribed to Xbox Game Pass. So I would actually be really, really interested to see how that, overall, subscriber percentage gets affected throughout, this upcoming year, to see, if they can maintain that 70%, because that would be legendary if they could, or if it will, of course, drop down. I think it will probably drop down. And a big reason why it's so high is because so many people who got these consoles are first adopters or hardcore fans, and it just makes sense for them to have Xbox Game Pass or be interested in subscribing to that service that is, by the way, so fantastic. I just think that's a little bit easier to understand. But another point that I also really, really want to dive into is, how, on launch, 3,594 games were being played. That is amazing. And that's really a testament to the importance of backwards compatibility that we've heard so many people throughout this last year booing and saying, why do you want backwards compatibility? Nobody wants to play old games. Well, apparently people did want to play old games because, on launch, they played 3,594 games, and 3,594 games did not release on launch. Right.
Right.
But to take it a little bit, just a little step further, if you are one of these people who are still saying that Xbox has no games, you're just a bozo at this point, because Xbox apparently has 3,594 games that you can play on your console right now at the very least. But overall, I think that, this is an amazing year for Xbox. I think this has been an amazing year for Xbox. I think next year is going to be even better. I think that this launch is an amazing moment to, celebrate for, the teams over at Redmond. And this is a massively, deserved victory for Team Xbox. I mean, seeing where they were at in 2013 and how they've transitioned and how all of their hard work and their planning has paid off to this moment is incredible. And I don't, regardless of if you're a Nintendo fan, you're, a Sony fan, or you're, a Microsoft fan, I think everyone should kind of be celebrating this moment because it's just a great moment for gaming.
It is. And I think what you said about that many games being played is a testament to the fact that there are gamers who played old games that apparently there are a subsect of the community that doesn't care about. And I mean, listen, I popped in a Republic Commando, which is one of my favorite OG Xbox games of all time. And yes, it still looks like an OG Xbox, but the fact that I'm playing that game that came out over 15 years ago is pretty damn incredible on your new hardware.
Yep.
So I mean, and again, you got to remember what you're getting with these, with this new console is the auto HDR, which games that didn't even know what HDR was or had in its programming are getting advantages playing on your new hardware. It's just incredible. But I just want to read two other quotes of what Elizabeth had to say. She says, we know that not everyone was able to get an Xbox Series X or S immediately, and we're working tirelessly with our partners around the world to bring as many new consoles to as many of you as possible over time, and are encouraged that they could get that done. It says check in with your local retailers directly for more details on availability in your market. And she finishes off the article with your early reaction and excitement for the next generation of Xbox has us feeling grateful and energized to continue building the future of gaming with you. On behalf of Team Xbox, thank you. And I got to be honest with you, I love the way that they closed out the article. It wasn't, maybe a page and a half long. I will add it to the show notes if you want to read it read it for yourself. I'm very, very happy to know that Microsoft had a successful launch. One of the things that we have not seen much, sure, there have been some hiccups. People have had a few issues, nothing on the scale of what's going on with the PlayStation 5 currently. And that just goes to show you that Jason Ronald and that team really built themselves a pair of consoles, not one next generation console, folks, but two next generation consoles that seem to be lighting up the airwaves when it comes about what games you're playing. And thankfully, I was in a position where I have both. I have the S in the room, the X out here. They're both standing vertical. And I am absolutely loving it. They're quiet as you can't even hear these things on, even when you're playing the most demanding games. So this is great, Zemi. And like I said, I do want to just kind of talk about for a second the fact that, like you said, during a COVID-ravaged world, they were able to get out 1.4 million of these consoles sold. Hopefully, they can get closer to 2 million before the end of the holiday, so people who missed out could potentially get their console.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, it really does suck for anyone out there that wanted one of these consoles, had the money for it. Maybe they were saving up, and they went out to the store and they just didn't have them. You know what I mean? Or they just sold out and they were just out of luck, or they went and stood in line for a pre-order, but they weren't able to get one, or websites crashed, and for one reason or another, they just weren't able to get one. And of course, it sucks for people that are wanting to get an Xbox, but it also sucks for people that are wanting to get a PlayStation or whatever device you're trying to get. But it really is incredible and amazing, and that Xbox was able to get out 1.4 million units and sell them in 40 different countries, which I believe is more countries on launch than Xbox has ever been able to sell in before.
That is absolutely correct.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think that that's amazing. It sucks that so many people are kind of being, left out. Like they just can't literally get an Xbox because none are available. And I really, really hope that, Xbox is, able to pull some more magic out of the hat and at least hopefully get, another million units out, into market before the end of this year. That way, people can enjoy, an Xbox for Christmas, or buy, a Series S for their kid, or whatever it may be. And I hope PlayStation does the same exact thing, because, it doesn't matter what, console you want. I think everyone should, hopefully be able to, get what they want, for Christmas if they have the money, right? But, unfortunately, and I've kind of been communicating this, a lot, and I kind of, use it for PlayStation. I also use it for Xbox. I don't really think these consoles, I think that they're going to come out with more, before March, but I don't think you're going to be able to just, readily just walk into a store, casually walk into a Best Buy or a Walmart or a GameStop and just pick one up off of the shelf, probably until March of next year. I don't think that the demand is going to come down quite enough for that to happen until at least March, which is very unfortunate. But hopefully Xbox can pump out as many units as they can, so as many fans can get their hands on these consoles before Christmas and before the end of this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, if you were like I said, if GameStop is where you shop, and I've talked about this on my show at least 3 times, I'm going to say it again. Black Friday, from what I've heard and the few people that I've spoken to, Black Friday is going to reveal both consoles. The Series X and S are going to be available on Black Friday. Now, I can't tell you how many they're going to have because I honestly do not know. What I would suggest is if you are a GameStop Patreon and you go in out of there and your staff, like I know mine, reach out to them. Say, listen, how many are you going to have? Because normally they won't tell people that walk off the street, because obviously they don't know who they're talking to. But if you know your manager or your assistant manager, stop by, say hello, bring them a cup of coffee and some donuts and say, hey, listen, I really want this console. Can you give me the skinny? If I'm first in line, will I get one that day? And you know what, you may have to sacrifice and stay 5, 6, 7 hours out there, but if you really want the console, you don't mind doing it. And I know for a fact that that Microsoft themselves has said that they're trying to, we just read it, they're trying to get out more consoles, and it looks like they're going to be able to do so. We just don't know how many more they're going to get. So again, I can't speak for Best Buy, I can't speak for Walmart or Target. I can speak on what I heard from certain insiders that I consider to be very reliable, and I'm not even talking about Gaming Forte, because he'll come out and he'll tell you how many his store is going to have. And if you're one of the 5 or 10 people that are in front of the store on Black Friday, you'll get a console, but you have to reach out to him. I can only say about my store and what I have heard, and they have said that they're going to have consoles. They just don't know how many. So like I said, you stop by your local GameStop. If you shop there and your manager, it doesn't hurt to ask, especially if you really want one of these consoles. But Zemi, I do want to move on to another pretty big topic. Now, this one, look, when you talk about Xbox, I think, you know what, real quick before I forget, because I just sent it to our DM. Speaking of CD Projekt Red, they just released 28 minutes ago. And don't leave this program to go watch. Watch after the program. Stick around because we have a lot to cover, and we're going to cover this on Thursday. They just released a new video with Xbox Series X gameplay reveal, where you actually see what the game is going to look like on your Series X. And from what Boxer Bear just said in the private chat, he says it looks absolutely insane, and that's running on the Series X. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that on Thursday because I have to watch the video. I can't watch it while I'm doing the show live. Obviously, I'm going to check it out afterwards. But I do want to move on to a topic. Now, this is a sore topic for a lot of folks, but I think it needs to be brought up again because we have new information. And of course, I'm talking about Halo Infinite. And Shino Elite, I know that you're probably rolling your eyes and say, oh, here we go. Boom is going to shit on Halo again. No, we have new information that from Phil Spencer that should put everyone's minds at ease when talking about 343i's Halo Infinite and what exactly is going on at the studio. In an interview with GameSpot, which was a fantastic interview with Phil Spencer, Xbox boss Phil Spencer has told fans not to worry about Halo Infinite despite the reports of departing developers. And this is what Phil had to say. He says sometimes what hits in the press or when certain things get announced internally, they have actually already happened months before. It's not always accurate when these things line up. He continues with, really have a lot of faith in Bonnie Ross and the team there, having Joe and Perry rejoin 343, which they did late last summer. I feel good about where we are on that team, but as an industry, we're always going to see turnover. So I'll say this. He says, he continues, I don't have any specific concern about 343. I actually think in the long run, turnover is a healthy thing because we want people who are really motivated by the things that they are currently working on. And the article says Spencer emphasizes that while the team takes the fan feedback to the reveal seriously, and unfortunate timing and not the feedback itself led to the delay being announced soon after. And he continues with two very, very interesting quotes. He said, it's not always accurate when these things line up. We did take the feedback coming out of the July showcase event very seriously, both on the date and what people were expecting from the game. We did take that feedback coming out of the July showcase, and we are working to make sure the next time that you guys see, and that this is my own words, that based on what he said, is that they took the feedback very seriously, Zami, and for good reason. The game looked fun to play. The control looked excellent. The story, based on what we know with Atriox and the Banish, is going to be epic. And hopefully we will get a return of the Flood, bringing back that somewhat horror element that we saw in early Halo iterations. But I'll say this. If he is publicly speaking about this, Zemi, and obviously coming out and publicly backing Bonnie Ross, they must be doing something right over at 343. And again, yes, the game did not look next generation. I mean, listen, let's call a spade a spade. That is not the Halo I expected to see. I thought it was cool looking, but they need to do better. And I think they're going to do better. So, I mean, my question to you is this. With the latest information from Phil Spencer during this GameSpot interview, like me, do you believe Halo Infinite will be, quote unquote, okay with the return of Joseph Staten, who is considered by many the mastermind behind every successful Halo game prior to him leaving with Bungie? What are your thoughts on this?
I think you said it great at the very beginning, that Halo was a very sore subject, for a lot of people. And I will say this, I do not think that this Halo game is going to be in any way terrible, right? But I don't know if it's going to be the Halo game that I want either, right? And so the way that I am just trying to look at, the new Halo Infinite game is very basic, but sometime next year it's going to come out if the timetables, stay the same, where they are. And we're all going to be able to jump into Halo Infinite and play it for ourselves. And, we're going to form our judgments on whether, the game is positive or a negative game. Right. And to me personally, I don't think that there's really anything that 343 can do to make everyone happy. Right. There, one way or another, there are going to be people who love this game 100% with all their heart. And there are going to be others that scream that it's the worst Halo that's ever been made. Right. That's just the, in my opinion, that's the truth I believe. Right. I think that it's just going to be a very subjective game. And in some ways we've kind of seen that with Halo 5, and we've seen that with Halo 4 with people feeling that kind of way. And, I really think that people's expectations for this game are so high that 343 or possibly any developer, couldn't hit the target, right? When it releases, I'm going to play it. I'm going to give it a chance. I might love it. I might hate it, but regardless, if I love it, then that's great. And I'll play it for the years to come. But if I hate it, then, there's still 22 other studios that Xbox is cooking in the kitchen with. Right. I really hope that this game is amazing. And if it's the greatest iteration of Halo, I'll be overjoyed. But if it misses the mark completely, then, I mean, there will be surely other Halo games. And if not, there's other games for me to play. I really just don't know how I feel about this Halo game. There's just been a lot of negative news that's kind of, came out about it, and a lot of, prominent people, have kind of left the studio from the same position. There's a lot of things that raises eyebrows. And I know that Phil is, kind of reassuring us that everything's, okay with the game, and that, so on and so forth. But there's still that part in the back of my mind that's like, my eyebrows are still raised a little bit. I don't 100% know. But I think that the best thing for all of us to probably do is just to wait until the game comes out, relax, wait for it, wait until we know more about what's happening with this game, and play it and form our own opinions about this game. I think that that's honestly probably the best thing for us to do, rather than, speculate on what Phil's saying, or taking everything that he says, as fact, or saying, no, Phil's just lying because he wants to make money, or without any speculations. I think the best thing for us to do is to wait until it comes out and play the game.
With this story, when I was writing it, and of course you have to read these stories. So I read the story a couple of times. And for me, it kind of raised more questions than it answered. And where I'm going with this is, and I kind of really want to get the chat involved. We have over 400 people here, which is fantastic. And I'm very interested to know what their, get the temperature of the room, what the people are saying about this. And my question is, he says he has full faith in Bonnie Ross. And like I said, I don't know Bonnie personally. I met her at E3 2019. Very, very smart, sharp woman for sure. Very, very passionate about Halo. Only got a chance to talk to her maybe a couple of minutes. Obviously she's an executive. I'm just a rabid fan stopping by the BS, right? And I was happy to have the few minutes that I got a chance to talk with her. The question is, and this is really for the chat, because I kind of want to get what the people are saying. Are you confident with her leadership skills based on what we've seen so far? And Zemi, I kind of want to pose that question as we wait for some of the answers. But before I do, look, a good friend and winner of the Xbox Series X, and hopefully he is playing it as we speak. Al Hogan drops a very generous $20 super chat, says thank you again from your brother in blue. Indeed. Listen, enjoy, man. Just watch your 6, sign out at the end of the tour, and enjoy gaming. Glad that you are enjoying your new console. Congratulations on the big win. Zemi, for you, look, we have to, and again, I know this is probably going to piss some people off, and you might even we're starting to lose people in the chat. Listen, like I talk about Sony's issues going on with the PlayStation 5, they stuck their head in the sand and they haven't responded. And I think that's gross. Okay. My PlayStation 5 isn't having any problems, thank God, but there are potentially hundreds and thousands of people that are. So shame on Sony for not taking their head out of the sand. Now, bringing this back into the Halo conversation, I think that it is foolish to suggest that there's nothing wrong at 343 Industries.
I mean, Phil Spencer literally says that they have made mistakes. His interview literally admits to mistakes being made.
Yes, he has actually publicly admitted that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
My question to you is, with the evidence that's been in front of us, and what you say, well, what evidence are you talking about, Boom? Well, the Master Chief Collection launched at a disaster. That's under her leadership. Halo 4, great single player, abysmal multiplayer. That's under her leadership. Halo 5, absolutely atrocious story for the single player, in my opinion. Fantastic Warzone and multiplayer under her leadership. Now, these are 3 full launches under her leadership. And people are starting to ask whether or not she is the one making these wrong choices. Now, I don't know if she's the leader of 343i. Zemi, do you think with them bringing back who they brought back is that an indication that maybe there's no confidence and they're just not publicly admitting it?
Like them bringing back I can't
Joseph
remember.
Staten.
Yeah, Joseph. Yeah. I think that is I think that that's a move to try to bring it back. You know what I mean? To reel it back in and to get Halo back on track and where it needs to be to be successful, right? I don't, I think, it's such a complex subject, right? Because, we're all we can do is speculate, right? At the end of the day, that's all we can do, right? Unless one of us can transform into a fly and fly inside 343 studios into the meeting rooms and start hearing some stuff, all we can do is just speculate, right? I don't know if Bonnie Ross is the one to blame. And for me personally, I do not like raising up my pitchfork and going after somebody if I don't know that it is their fault, right? She is the leader, of that studio. She is the head of that studio. And at the end of the day, I think the saying is the buck stops with her, right? But I don't know if that is who to blame. I don't know anyone else to blame, right? I'd find it a little hard to blame the creative director. They've had, 2 or 3 of those now, right? So I really don't know what is happening at 343, and that's kind of the problem with with Phil Spencer's statement, is that he's trying to reassure us, and in some ways I think he's also trying to reassure the studio that trying to keep a positive vibe for the studio as well, because could you imagine working at that studio, being like a low developer, or even like a senior artist or something like that? Like I'm sure that you were not the happiest trooper in camp right now, right? So I just it's just a mixed bag of emotions and a mixed bag of thoughts. I don't know who to blame or necessarily what they should do beyond launch an investigation, like I've said, and try to figure out what the problem is. Is the problem the marketing team? Why, if they knew that these problems existed before, and they and they knew that then you would imagine that they would have known that they would have had to delay the game. Why show off a game and then delay it a few weeks later? Why not just not show off the game and just kind of keep it internal and just try to work through the problems using market research and have people look at the game and tell you what they think, right? I don't know. It's a very confusing situation. I think 343 has made a lot of mistakes with this game. I think mistakes can be scattered around to everyone, but I think ultimately what needs to be done now is that they just fix it. They find whatever the problem is, and hopefully they found the problem. And hopefully Joseph Staten coming in is their solution to that problem, and hopefully we see the game that we all kind of wanted to see here in a few weeks whenever they show it off or whatever. But I don't really know who to blame, because it's just speculation, man. It's just reading what journalists are saying about this, and then taking what Phil Spencer is saying about it, and what some of these journalists and what some of these people that have worked at 343 kind of or supposedly worked at 343 and kind of came out and said doesn't necessarily line up with what Phil Spencer is saying. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I'll say this. We're going to have to wait and see exactly what is going to be happening. We do have it on a story that was posted yesterday, and we're not talking about it today. I'm waiting for more information to come on the back end of it, and I'm waiting for someone to confirm something for me behind the scenes. But apparently, there's going to be a big update coming for Halo Infinite. And I don't know exactly what that update is going to reveal. Is it going to be a new trailer? Is it going to be the same trailer redone in the new graphics scheme that they're doing? I don't know. I don't have enough information. I'm waiting to see if I can get some more confirmation of what exactly they're going to be showing. But apparently, it is going to be something substantial. So I again, we'll talk about that on Thursday with the rest of the crew. But look, I'll say this: there are no bigger Halo fans and I'll put myself into that conversation. I do want to kind of address something that popped up in the chat with Others Inc. Now, Others Inc., you get in your feels very often, dude, and you get yourself really twisted. And this is just a conversation we're having. And, you know, this is now like the 5th or 6th or 10th time you've ever said this. And I get your point. His point, and he said in the chat, and I'm trying to find it, that Halo 5 is the best-selling Halo of all time. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the story was garbage, dude. Okay, people bought Halo 5 based on the commercials. They sold those copies based on what we thought it was going to be, a Master Chief versus Locke. And it turns out that wasn't in fact the case, which is why people walked away like myself walked away disappointed. And so you can, you know, put all caps all you want. That doesn't take away from the fact that yes, it was the best-selling Halo, but is it the best reviewed Halo? What are the fans saying? What are the people that have energy swords and shrines to Master Chief right behind me are saying about Halo 5? They're saying what I'm saying, that the story was a disappointment, that the multiplayer was fantastic, but the story wasn't. So again, I mean...
And if you're using game sales as your metric of judging if a game is good or not, you know, that's very flawed, right? Because under that metric, that means Minecraft is the best game that has ever been created because it's the best selling game. And I would imagine that there's a lot of people that would disagree with Minecraft is the best game of all time, you know, just because it sold the most, right? So that's a flawed metric in judging a game's worth or if a game is good or not. You know, you can't just judge it off of how well it sold. Another problem with doing that as well is that there are more gamers right now in the market buying games than there were whenever Halo 1 came out. Right. So obviously, Halo 5 sold more than Halo 1. Does that mean that Halo 5 is better than Halo 1? Not really. I mean, ultimately, it's very subjective. But I just don't think that using game sales as a metric to judge a game's worth and to judge how well a game is or how good a game is a very good, accurate, metric for that representation.
Well, I mean, I agree. And of course, listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I have mine of Halo 5 and how it took me nearly 2 years after its launch to beat it just to say I beat it. So that's saying something, considering as much time as I put into Halo 1, 2, 3, Reach, and ODST. So there you go. So again, that's my opinion. If you disagree with it, hey, that's not a problem. That's the great thing about these talk shows. We can have a conversation. Unfortunately, some people want to yell and some other people want to just talk. I'm more of a rather talker than a yeller. But Zemi, I do want to move on to another big Phil Spencer interview that he did with The Guardian. Obviously Phil was once again candid, as you would expect him to be. And the article was titled, "As the Xbox Series X and Series S are released, Microsoft gaming chief Phil Spencer says the next games generation is all about how many players you have, not how many consoles you shift." And here is some of the questions and Phil's statements in response to them, what he asked. And he says this, he cites this year's Tell Me Why is a perfect example. I honestly don't think we would have greenlit Tell Me Why if not for Xbox Game Pass. It's an episodic, story-driven game. You don't see a lot of them getting made. We knew with the 15 million subscribers for Xbox Game Pass that we have now, it would get played and people would engage with it more than they would if they had to spend a $30 price point in front of it. He continues to say, even Flight Simulator is a game we would not have greenlit if we did not see Game Pass growing. We had 1 million players for Battletoads. These are all examples of games that in an exclusive retail model would be more challenging. And he says this: Game Pass and cloud gaming are Xbox's focus, he says, but now to the exclusion of consoles, at least not yet. Hopefully, our focus supports all of the models that are currently out there, from retail to free to play to subscriptions. I think that diversity of business models is one of the key differences between what we're trying to do and what happened in music, where everything shifted all at once. And when asked about the official Xbox sales, Xbox One sales numbers, Phil's direct response was this: I know it seems manipulative, and I apologize for that, but I don't want my team's focus on console sales. The primary outcome of all of the work that we do is how many players we see, how often they play. That is what drives Xbox. If I start to highlight something else, both publicly and internally, it changes our focus. Things that lack backwards compatibility become less interesting. Putting our games on PC becomes a reason that someone doesn't have to go and buy an Xbox Series X. I'll hold fast to this. We publicly disclose player numbers. That's the thing I want us to be driven by, not how many individual pieces of plastic did we sell. Now, Zemi, there's a lot to get into this. This is, again, this is as candid as we've heard Phil discuss numbers of selling consoles. I've said this publicly myself, that I think that even though the Series S is going to be probably the biggest seller between the two new consoles, I don't necessarily know if we're ever going to get how many of those consoles sold, even if they outsell Sony. Which is pretty interesting, because it's something that I mean, if I was in charge, I would do that. But I can see Phil's point of view. At this point, considering that they have two new consoles, they're giving you the ability to play with xCloud on your tablet, on your phone, and potentially next year on your TV, through whether that's going to be something you plug into the TV or an app on your new Samsung TV, and you just need a wireless controller. They're more concerned about how many players are playing their games. And I think that's probably more important. Now, that's not a Sony traditional way of thinking, which is why they still hold in regards their metrics of consoles sold, as opposed to how many players. Because obviously Microsoft is giving the next generation the ability to play on so many different devices that they're going to want those people playing attached to Xbox Game Pass. What are your thoughts on this article, dude?
I really like the article. I think it makes sense. What Microsoft is doing here is extremely smart, and it's super forward thinking. And it kind of dives into something that I've been talking about for a while. And I believe that you've mentioned it a few times, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And, that is that the industry is changing, right? The video game industry is very large. By gross revenue, it's now larger than the films industry, meaning that it produces more revenue than the films/movies industry, video games do. Okay. And for the longest time, for Xbox, for PlayStation, for Nintendo, it's been about selling consoles, selling hardware to sell software, that software primarily being video games. But there is a problem with that business model. The business model that PlayStation is still using, Sony or Nintendo is still using as well, and what Xbox previously used to sell hardware, to sell software. There's a big problem with that. And that big problem for that business model is that if you don't sell the hardware, then you won't sell software. And if you don't sell the software, then you don't make money. And that's kind of counterproductive to what a business is, right? You want to make money. And Xbox learned firsthand how dangerous this business model can be back in 2013, when their sales for their new consoles were far under their competition, right? And I know 2013 is kind of like one of those subjects that nobody ever wants to talk about, because it's like the dark days of Xbox. But I think that it's really important to recognize that as the key pinnacle moment for Microsoft changing the way that they do business. And I believe that moment is a key factor uh, that created this new business model. It's not the only factor, but it is a key factor. Because why should Xbox sell games or services to the 50 or 60 million users that it has on its consoles when there's an estimated 2.7 billion gamers out there in the world? Right? Why do you want to cap yourself to 50 to 60 million users when there's 2.7 billion people out in the world that play video games?
Yeah.
And, I think that this also kind of goes into some statistics that I've mentioned a lot. And I know a lot of the times people don't like listening to these statistics because they're boring, but it really does make a whole lot of sense whenever you look at it like this. In the global revenue of the games industry, all the money that's created in the games industry, 25% of that, roughly 25%, comes from the console segment. Okay, from console gaming. And that is shared by Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, right? So imagine it being a pizza. Xbox is sharing 1/4 of the pizza with two of their biggest competitors, right? And what Xbox is doing right now is they decided that they wanted to branch out into other segments. They don't want to be solely reliant on the hardware. So that's why we've seen xCloud and being able to play the games on PC and mobile devices, because PC takes up another 25% of all revenue that's in the games industry. Mobile gaming, smartphones, tablets, that type of gaming takes up 50% of all revenue that's in the games industry. So if Xbox kept with the mentality of only selling its, games on consoles, they're missing out on 75% of being able to enter in and have the possibility of getting 75% or into, both the segments that take up 75% of all revenue that comes in through the games industry. And that is a huge, huge, huge chunk that they would be missing out on. And I think that's important to realize is to realize how small console gaming is. I mean, it is the fastest growing segment, but it's still relatively small on, the basis of how much money gets, created, in a year, for the games industry. It's still relatively small.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when you look at what they're looking to do, Zemi, with everything that you've just said, this, like for instance, the Americas right here in this region is console sales are important, right? They are important. But I think Microsoft has been very, very forward thinking, especially when you consider what they're looking to do in the the East, especially in Asia, right? We know that the Japanese market and the Chinese market, even Korea, they're just not console players like they used to be. Console gaming is not so much a thing anymore there, and it hasn't been for many, many years. What they're doing with putting how many players are attached to their brand as opposed to how many consoles is why I think they're going to succeed in those markets, Sammy.
Absolutely they are. Absolutely they are. And that kind of, goes to the point that I'll try to drive home right now is that, there are a lot of gamers out there in the world, right? And for the longest time, it's always just been about selling your hardware to sell software. But I do believe that the problems that Microsoft encountered in 2013 is one of the factors that led them to this point, because selling your hardware to sell software is going to limit the amount of profits that you can make, right? Why force somebody to, buy a piece of hardware whenever you can sell your games to everyone, regardless of what they own, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to make more money that way. And at the end of the day, Xbox is a business and it's all about making money. And, like you said, certain regions are more, enticed by playing, in the certain segments, right? Some regions, they only care about PC gaming. Some regions, they only care, they only care about mobile gaming. Like, if I'm not mistaken, India is very, very big for PC gaming, whereas, like you were saying, Japan, South Korea, they are very, very big into mobile gaming. So of course, Xbox has to adapt its business to cater to those other regions as well as North America, who loves, playing on PC. We love playing on consoles. We also enjoy mobile gaming as well. Probably not as much as, Japan and South Korea do, but yeah. But and I think that it's also really important to recognize that the industry is shifting, the industry is changing. It may be 10 years, it may be 20 years, it may be 30 years, but there will become a day when you don't have to buy hardware. Right. We've seen it happen with movies on, Netflix and television shows on Netflix. We've seen how cable has declined so much because of streaming technology.
Yep.
Music is virtually streamed everywhere that we go as well. I mean, that is just the way that gaming is heading, right? We're seeing the early signs of it right now with Google Stadia and Luna and Xbox getting into streaming technology. There will become a day, once again, maybe 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 30, right? But there will become a day when you do not have to have a piece of hardware to play your games natively on that, right? You can just play off a TV, or you could just play off a smartphone, or just any screen, right? And when that day comes, what is Sony going to do? Right? Because they're not preparing themselves. At least it doesn't appear that they're preparing themselves for this future. And I think 2013 was a lesson to Xbox, showing them how vulnerable they are with what was then their current business model. And, I think that this move is, of course, to safeguard them for the future as well. Because once again, maybe 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 30, but there will become a time where people won't be buying consoles anymore. And Xbox is still going to want to stay in business. So how do they do that? Well, they do that by doing what they're doing right now and sell to everyone, regardless of what system you're playing on or how you want to play your games. Use how many users you have as the metric to your success rather than how many consoles you've sold.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be successful. I again, when you look at what they're doing for, looking at the bigger picture, looking at the worldwide picture, I think they're going to be successful in regions that they normally were not successful in. And this was, I thought this was a fantastic article. It's in fact well written, as well as again, Phil being as candid as what we expect him to be as the leader of Xbox. And again, did it reveal any major new information? No, but it did give you kind of a peek behind the curtain of what drives them to on what they feel is going to be profitable and why games would or would not be made. I mean, I was a little taken aback.
I really enjoyed that part of the article where he was talking about how that Battletoads game would have probably never been created if it wasn't for Game Pass, if it wasn't for, their business model with that service, and how, Tell Me Why wouldn't have been made. But it was made because of Game Pass and because they knew that people would be interested in playing something like that. They may not be interested in, going out and paying $30, $60 for it. But if it's in Game Pass, they're more than willing to give it a try in there. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that that's actually something that we've kind of somewhat seen repeated in a similar business model like Netflix or Amazon Prime, where, a TV show might get canceled on like a local cable network, but then Netflix goes and grabs, the rights to that show, or Amazon grabs the rights to that show, and they start producing new episodes and new seasons of that show on their own service. And it does a lot more successful on, an Amazon Prime or, Prime Video or a Netflix than it did on cable.
Yeah, and we've seen that more often to not, where that would happen. Look, I like I said, I have a lot of faith in what they're doing. Sure. Of course, I want to see them successful in other regions, because if they could find a foothold in some of the regions that they've failed before, what that's going to do is bring more Xbox players into the conversation. With more Xbox players means more subscriptions, and the more money they make, the better chances they're going to be going and continuing to buy new studios. As a matter of fact, a new article just dropped where we're going to be talking about on Thursday, about how Phil Spencer confirmed that yes, they're actively looking for teams. When that announcement is going to come, I don't know if that's going to be something we get at the end of the year, or is that something that they hold for sometime in the beginning of 2021. But again, we'll be getting into those particular details on Thursday's show. I do want to just catch up on some of the super chats, and then we're going to talk about what our most anticipated next generation game is. And I really want to involve the chat in that, because I know there's going to be a lot of different picks, and I'm interested to hear what Zemi has to say, as well as you guys and gals. Hank Dank, very generous friend of the show, he drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, I know it ain't much, but I'll throw this in with the Xmas with Boom. Love you guys. Keep up the best gaming podcast on YouTube. Well, first of all, dude, I don't expect anything, so any super chat is fantastic. I'm always humbled by the fact that someone would take money out of their pocket and support this channel. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for the kind words. I'm glad that you are, in fact, enjoying the show. And it makes me and Zemi very happy to know that there are people that, even though we may not agree on certain subjects, particularly Halo, that but we do that you do enjoy the content nonetheless. Hot Grizz drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, Boom, I got to be honest. I would really like Xbox to produce a Game of the Year type content or game then what Phil Spencer says will hold more weight with him. And I agree. I know what you're saying. I know you want Microsoft to put on the table a Last of Us type of game. You want them to put a God of War type of game. You want them to put a Horizon Zero Dawn type of game on your Xbox console. And I got to be honest with you, dude, those games are coming. I think Hellblade 2, when it releases, and I believe it's coming out next year. Again, I have no specific ties with Ninja Theory, so I can't say for sure. My gut feeling is telling me that game is coming next year. Now, I don't know if COVID potentially hurt the chances of that, but that's what my gut is telling me, so I'm going to go with it. I think that we have a good chance that whatever the initiative is working on is going to be epic. I hope that it, in fact, is a Perfect Dark reboot of some sorts. With that team being as stacked with talent as they are, I think it's going to be special.
And I think that is literally the last check mark that Microsoft or Xbox needs to hit to finally come full circle.
Yeah, I agree.
From last gen. They have power, they have price. The value is incredible. Really, that is the last check mark that they need to hit, right? Is show us those amazing next gen games. And we know that they're coming. We know that they're coming, but that is just the last thing that they need to hit off.
And and to your point, the last super chat that have come in, it's by case basis. He drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, this entire discussion just seems to further prove why Microsoft does not need to put Bethesda games on PlayStation. It runs counter to their goals. Great point. As a matter of fact, I would dare say that the reason why Microsoft themselves has not confirmed that those games will never make it to a PlayStation console unless Game Pass does is because of the legal beagle stuff that's going on. They really can't talk about the purchase until it's done, which is expected that the paperwork is going to be signed, sealed, and delivered in 2021 and potentially early spring. I'm thinking maybe March or April the deal would be done. With these kinds of deals, if you remember the Fox Disney deal took almost a year before they could talk about what their plans were with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, because obviously there's certain things they can say and there's certain things they can't. So I would imagine that in early spring that deal is going to get done. And I'll say this, I hope that none of these games come to PlayStation. And I say that not to be disrespectful to Sony. I'm saying that if the shoe was on the other foot, we know that Sony would never allow a game to come on Xbox if they own the IP. It's the same principle that we will never see a Spider-Man from Insomniac on an Xbox. It's the same principle that if Sony were to buy, let's say, for instance, the team that just did the Souls game, Bluepoint. If Bluepoint was purchased by Sony, do you think you'd ever see a Bluepoint game come to an Xbox console? Of course you wouldn't. That would be insanity. So I'm expecting that Bethesda games are going to stay on Xbox because they're looking to sell not the console. That sure helps. Console sales help. I don't care what anyone says, but they're looking to sell the service. And if you can tell someone that potentially may or may not buy your console, but still wants to be involved in the ecosystem known as Xbox, and they can play on their pewter, they can play on their PC, they can play on their tablet, or they can play on their phone for $15 a month, and Avowed is in there, or the next Doom is in there, or the next Fallout is in there. Oh, I said Avowed, but that's Obsidian. But if you pick your favorite franchise from Bethesda and throw it into the conversation, if you can tell that player that those games are available in Xbox Game Pass, not PlayStation Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, you're going to get them to do the most important thing and subscribe to your monthly service. And again, I don't know if the Japanese market would enjoy a Doom Eternal 2. I don't know, because I don't know that market like I used to. I don't really import stuff anymore, so their flavors have changed, Emmy. But if you can tell someone in those regions where they have notoriously failed that they can get all of this incredible entertainment for $15 a month, they're going to bite on that. What are your thoughts on that, Zemi?
I very much disagree. I think that Microsoft's new business model could very much support the idea of publishing, certain Bethesda titles on the PlayStation console after a timed exclusive, 6-month, a year timed exclusive on to that console. Obviously Bethesda titles would never go into PlayStation Now the same way that they would never go onto Google Stadia or Amazon Luna. But I really think that Xbox's business model really does support that ideology the same way that Netflix will sell its box sets of its TV shows on Amazon.com, which is a competitor, right? I mean, it's I get it. It's very fundamental differences between you and me on this subject, but I really do think that their business model 110% would support it. I think that you're 100% right in saying that Sony would never do that. And Sony would never do that, but Sony does have a completely different business model to what Xbox has right now. That, if they don't sell their hardware, they don't sell their software. And if they don't sell software, they go out of business, right? Whereas Xbox has a completely different business model that's not, based off of hardware. And, we've seen that, Microsoft does not consider PlayStation its main competitor. Sure, they're still a competitor, but they're not main competitors. So for my mindset, I believe that there's going to definitely be people that prefer to play their games on Sony's console, and they won't subscribe to Xbox Game Pass one way or the other. And so after a 1-year timed exclusive, selling the game for $70, $60 on their marketplace digitally, I think it makes sense. And it's what we've seen other people with similar business models to what Xbox is doing right now. We've seen them do it. Once again, I know it's a very divisive subject. That's just the way I feel about it.
I mean, listen, we definitely disagree. And a lot of people in the chat are of course, politely disagreeing with you as well, sure. Zemi, because, they feel... Look, I'll say this, and I don't want to call it anybody in particular, because everyone's, of course, entitled to their opinion. But in my opinion, I think that allowing these games to be on a Sony platform completely removes what Microsoft is looking to do to bring Sony players into the Xbox ecosystem. See, because that's what I mean. Again, I don't see it as Microsoft trying to just hold this jar of candy above someone's head and say, yeah, listen, haha, we have it, you don't. But I think that what they are attempting to do is and I think if Phil's even said this, we talked about it just moments ago. He doesn't care about how many pieces of plastic he moves. What he cares about is how many players he has playing their games. And I think the only way you get a Bethesda game actually on a PlayStation is if they allow Xbox Game Pass on that particular service on Sony, like you would another app. Like you can play, like if you booted up your PlayStation 5 right now, you can play a PlayStation game, but you can also log into other different accounts like Netflix, right? You can to Hulu, to Shudder, you just name the services. So if Microsoft was to get their app, and you can actually play Xbox games through Game Pass on your Sony machine, which I don't agree with. Me personally, I don't, but I'm not in charge. So what the hell do I know? But to allow a game or a franchise that you just spent $7.5 million on to buy Bethesda, I just don't see the logic in allowing one of those IPs that when they are released are going to not only potentially sell your consoles, but more importantly, is going to sell subscription services, because you can only find that particular IP on an Xbox console or service. Mm-hmm. And I think that with what they're attempting to do is convert. They're not looking to have people abandon PlayStation. And I keep hearing this argument. Well, people aren't going to abandon their digital library. I don't think Microsoft wants you to abandon your digital library. I don't think they want you to, take your PlayStation 5 and throw it in the garbage and say, I'm never going back to Sony again. No, what they want you to do is enjoy your PlayStation. Enjoy Miles Morales, enjoy God of War, enjoy Aloy, and whatever the next Uncharted is going to be. That's great. But we also want you to kind of participate in Xbox, and that's why they're hoping. And I've been banging this drums. I mean, you can back me up on this. How I believe this particular generation is going to be the biggest dual console support generation in the history of gaming, and that's just my opinion on it, because of what both consoles are doing differently.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Xbox is not trying to move plastic, but fundamentally, the thing that Xbox is trying to do, the overall goal that Xbox has, like any business, is to make money, right? And I fundamentally believe that there is more money to be made by a timed exclusive for certain Bethesda titles, and then after that, publishing the game for a $60, $70 price on the PlayStation. I think that there's more money to be made doing that than just locking it down as a 100% exclusive for the Xbox platforms.
Yeah. I mean,
fundamentally different. You believe that 100% locking it down is going to produce Xbox more money via memberships, and I can appreciate that. It's just a fundamental difference. It's just like you believe one strategy is better than what I believe. I'm not going to say that you're right or I'm wrong. I just really believe that the way that I'm looking at it makes more sense, and you believe the way that you think it makes more sense. It's just different of opinion.
No, and that's great. That's what's great about that's what's great about having a this kind of show where it's just two people, because we can disagree and we can still have an adult conversation, and I really enjoy that. Let me catch up with some of these super chats before I get to the final topic of the day, and that's going to be what we are the most excited for regarding next generation, a next generation game. JD Gamer, a very generous friend of the show, he drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, I can see Donut and Delilah Studios joining Xbox, and Delilah becoming Xbox's remake specialist, while Donut expands and offers AAA versions of their games. That's pretty interesting. We have a super chat that comes in from a good friend of the show, Optimus Code. He drops a very generous $25 super chat. Thank you, Optimus, for not only being here, but your generosity. He says this: is this an Xbox-centric podcast, or do you cater to all gamers? Ha, just kidding, Boom. Here to show my support, fam. Well, thank you so much for that. This particular show is only about Xbox, and I think you know that. We talk about multiple multiplats on primetime, and of course, the other bookend of my produced products is, of course, Breakfast with Boom. We have Lethal Terminus drops a very generous $5 super chat and says Xbox could use their own Bloodborne. Oh, I'm sorry, just the chat just moved up real quick. He says Xbox could use their own Bloodborne or Demon Souls. Yeah, and you know something, I agree there. Not my cup of tea. I mean, I bought Demon Souls. I'm terrible at it, and I've died 100 times, and I'm probably only going to play it a handful of more times. I don't even know why I bought it. I think I just wanted a new game for the PlayStation 5. But I agree. I think that they could use their own Souls type of game.
And that's a possibility depending on what they acquire in Japan.
That is a fantastic point. Yeah, you just don't know, because if they were to buy From Software, which would be pretty ridiculous, then From Software would produce a title like a Souls game exclusively for the Xbox.
Another thing that I truly believe that that they really need, in the Xbox first party lineup, because once again with any service like this, variety is key.
It is absolutely key.
Fighting game. They do not have a fighting game,
which is why I want them to buy Capcom.
I was just about to say that. Depending on what they do in Japan, they may have that too.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say this. We do know for a fact that they were looking to spend $40 billion on TikTok. Right? We know that did not happen. That fell through. And I'm actually kind of glad it did, because I don't know if the Bethesda deal would have still happened. I mean, they're valued at $1.7 trillion right now. So, $1 billion for them is much different. That's a monster amount of money. To Microsoft, that's probably around $100. And I'm being facetious. I'm not being serious. I mean, they value their investments. But if that 40 million was taken off the table because TikTok didn't fall through, or it did fall through, and that's why they spent $7.5 billion on Bethesda, the amount of money left over from that investment fund of 40 billion is significant. And that significance could lead to not just one publisher / developer like a Capcom. It could lead to several, or several, a publisher and several smaller development houses. I'd love to see them acquire Crytek. I'd love to see them acquire
Asobo.
Asobo is, or People Can Fly is another one. I think that team is extremely talented. So, I mean, the list goes on and on. They are actively looking for other developers / publishers to add to XGS. I have heard from internal sources that the number that they're currently looking for is to have 30. That's right, 30. First-party developers making games for the Xbox and Xbox Game Pass. That is where they're going to potentially stop. Again, I'm not going to reveal my source. That is what I have been told. Now, whether or not that is true, could you just imagine if they did have 30 studios and how often we would get AAA games? Again, folks, we have to remember that these games and these studios were all added after 2018. We're still only in 2020. So all of the games that took all the almost 4 and 5 years for Sony to develop from the beginning of the PlayStation 4 to the end of this generation were in development for years. We have to allot Microsoft the same time to release these big AAA bangers that are coming. And just to finish off Lethal Terminus's point, he says, I think it would fill a void in their portfolio and build a loyal fan base. Yeah, you know what? That's a very, very strong statement and a very true statement. Smitty Smith, our brother, bringing us back to church once again. He says this after dropping a $5 super chat. Microsoft to Sony, you ain't getting these games, but you can catch these hands. LOL, the Book of X. I love it, Smitty. Thank you so much for being here, brother. We have Hank Dank drops an additional $5 super chat, says Evil Dead Hail to the King is finally coming to consoles 2021. My God, I hope so. Yes, please. The world needs a new Evil Dead game, and hopefully it's voiced by none other than, of course, Ash himself. And I'm actually hoping that Bruce Campbell does get his way into Mortal Kombat, that has been rumored for quite some time. JD Gamer, another generous friend of the show, he drops an additional $5 super chat and says, just want your opinion on a subject that DualSense is awesome. It is now available on PC. I think Microsoft should get their own version of haptic feedback. Yes, you know what? I'll say this. Look, I think the haptic feedback is important. Is it a game changer for me personally? The answer is it's not. I think that it's cool. I think that it's unique. I also think that, like Zemi said earlier, it's a bit of a gimmick. Now, I don't know how many third-party developers are going to take advantage of Sony's haptic triggers. I do agree with you, though. I think that Microsoft's next evolution to this controller, now whether that's going to be somewhere down the line with the standard controller or potentially the DualShock 3.0, where the haptic triggers are going to be a part of that design, I would like to see them incorporated. Again, they're not a big deal for me, but that doesn't mean they're not a big deal for a bunch of other gamers who like the haptic triggers that are currently on the DualSense. That's a fantastic question. Viper XT, dude, wow, he shows his generosity once again with an additional outrageous $10 super chat and says, if Microsoft decided to publish Bethesda games for a PlayStation console, it would give them a heads up to what Sony's PlayStation 5 Pro or PS6 specs would be down the road, and they could react accordingly. Wow, that is pretty interesting. I never actually thought about that, but my goodness, that is, you know what? That's a great point, and that could potentially be why Sony wouldn't want those games, because they would have to give information to Microsoft, and more specifically Bethesda, who is now first party, about the specs of the PlayStation 5 Pro, which we know is in development, and the PS6. That is very, very interesting. JD Gamer shows his generosity once again. Wow, dude, with an additional super chat of $10, and he says, all of these people out here capping about launch titles are going into the same people crying foul and jumping off the Sony ship when these 30+ studios start pumping out games on a regular 2 and 3 year cycle. Yeah, I think that once Microsoft can get into a groove and we start seeing Hellblades and the Halos and the Forzas and the next Gears, whatever that's going to be, and whatever else Avowed is going to look like, and Fable, and just pick your favorite franchise and just say that it's coming out. I think people are going to really, really start to gravitate towards Xbox, because listen, Sony's games, they're really good, folks. You know how I feel about their first party stuff. I really do enjoy them, but they take a long time, and they're never 3-year development cycles. They're usually like 5. So, I mean, obviously in 2017, we had Aloy. In 2018, we had God of War. In 2019, you know, what came out in 2019 for Sony that was big?
Detroit, what was that? What was that one?
Detroit
game?
Become Human is one of them.
Detroit Become Human, I believe, came out in 2019.
For some reason, I thought that was 2018. But regardless, it takes Sony a long time, and they give their studios that long time to come out with these games, and that's fine. But I think Microsoft having the extreme amount of developers is going to put them in a rhythm and a cadence unlike anything we've ever seen before. But
was it the motorcycle zombie game that came out in 2019?
Yes, it was Days Gone. Days Gone that came out, and again that's now 60 frames. It's now certainly
also the walking simulator with the great peeing animations. With the
yes, that was the one by Kojima. So the peeing, I love it. The pee bombs, the poop bombs, I love it. But folks, listen, before we get you on out of here, as we close in on the 2-hour mark, I'm interested to get the chat's opinion on what next generation Xbox title are you most excited about? And Zemi, I want to go to you first because my answer is going to surprise a lot of people. For you, out of all of what we know, and we know a lot, we do have a good idea of what is coming out. What is the next generation game that you're most excited about for the future of the Xbox Series X and S?
Does it have to be first party?
I would like to keep it first
like
party.
a next gen game.
No, I would like.
Okay, well, I'll give two answers then. If it doesn't have to be a first party game, then for sure 100% Hogwarts Legacy. Okay, yeah, right. Other than that, if it has to be a first party game, probably Fable or Avowed. One of those two. I'm torn. Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. I take all of that back. Elder Scrolls 6. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I take all of that back. Elder Scrolls 6. That's final answer. Elder Scrolls 6.
And that's a strong choice. And when that does come out, it is going to be of epic levels. We know they've been working on it for years. I would imagine I'd love to see that game released next year. I don't think we're going to get it.
Starfield's coming first, man.
Starfield is coming first next year.
100%.
I would think
my savior has said that.
Todd Howard, your savior. Well, Todd Howard's a good dude. I'm glad he's a part of Xbox, to be honest with you. I really like Todd Howard, and I think Starfield is going to be amazing. It's going to be interesting, to be honest with you. But for me, my pick, and I'm seeing there's a lot of choices here. State of Decay 3 that comes in from Anthony Chipmunk.
Hellblade 2 from Django 6.
Nice. That's a strong pink. Chief Nagel 8 Halo Infinite. That's a fantastic choice. 901 the Gamer. He puts Forza Horizon 5. That's a strong pick.
Gamer by choice. This isn't a first party Xbox game, but he has GTA 6.
Yeah,
that is going to be a fantastic game.
That's going to be a monster game on wherever it lands, and it's probably going to be multi-plat for sure. You know what? My pick is a little bit of an unknown here, and I'm going based on my love of these two franchises, and I'm going to talk about the team that brought us We Happy Few. They are currently working on a game that is a third-person horror game that's in the lines of Uncharted meets BioShock. I don't know what the game is called. I don't think anyone knows what the game is called outside of maybe Phil Spencer and a few people on the team. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they do because We Happy Few didn't hit for a lot of people. I mean, I bought the game in the preview program because I thought it was going to be more like BioShock. And it turned out to be not really what I expected. But based on Phil's he did an interview a couple of months ago where he was asked to pick what his favorite next-gen game is that the public hasn't seen yet. And it was that particular game by the developer, and their name escapes me, from that developed We Happy Few. What the hell is the name of that studio, Zemi?
It is escaping me right now.
Anybody in the chat, help us out, man. Throw it in there. I'll give you a big shout out because for some reason I can't. I cannot remember what the name of that team is. And I should be ashamed of myself as a host. But anyway, listen, it's that particular game from the team that brought us We Happy Few that I'm very, very excited about. JD Gamer drops, another super chat for $5. He says, Fable, Forza, Avowed, Hellblade.
I have the answer.
Oh, what is it?
Compulsion Games.
Compulsion Game.
As soon as I read it, I had to Google it.
JD Gamer throw that in. Viper XT threw it in. Smitty Smith threw it in. And thank you, gentlemen. But JD Gamer says his games that he's most excited about and he's got a long. He's got a long list here. He says Fable, Forza, Avowed, Hellblade 2, Elder Scrolls 6, Doom, Starfield, Halo Infinite, Everwild, State of Decay 3, and whatever Tim Schafer makes next. Tim Schafer, man, I'm so glad. I'm so happy for his team that he's now part of Xbox Game Studios because he is not only an industry icon, but because he now has the backing, we could potentially see some of his most wackiest stuff. Brutal Legend, if you've never played it, is an incredible game that he made with Jack Black. That game was outstanding, and we could see a sequel from those two now that he's with Xbox, and I would love to see it. I mean, obviously, Psychonauts 2 is coming out. I believe it's going to be out early next year. That's going to be a wacky game, a bit of a platform, which is what I like. So I'm looking forward to that. But Sammy, this has been a great 2 hours. We got a lot of topics in. Let's I got to tell you how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 topics today. That is pretty awesome. That's why we enjoy the 2-man show, because we get a chance to really, talk about different things, and we can actually spend 40 minutes on one topic and still have enough time for the show to give other topics. And we want to thank everyone that tuned in. We had over 400 people here today. That is a big deal for a small growing channel like mine. And Zemi, do me a favor, brother. Tell everyone about where they could reach out to you on social media if they want to start up a conversation. But more importantly, tell everyone about your YouTube channels with an S.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can go and follow me, or I guess subscribe to me on YouTube. The first channel is called Zimmy Games, where I do a bunch of gaming related content, tutorial videos, gaming reviews, and gaming news, and all sorts of that type of stuff. My second YouTube channel, I've pretty much abandoned at this point, but if you want to go and check out the one and only video that's on that YouTube channel, you can do so by just searching up Zimmy Eats. You guys can also follow me on Twitter at Zimmy Games. And I say this during every show, and I 100% genuinely mean it. If you heard something during today's show that you agree with, or more likely that you disagree with, at least for this particular show, always feel free to throw me a DM and let me know, what the topic was and how you feel about it. I absolutely love having conversations about gaming news and just topics, in gaming with just anyone out there in the community. I absolutely enjoy it, and I think it's a great way for me to grow as a person and learn other other views on different topics and stuff like that. So definitely feel free to do that. And then also on my Twitter, I, post just random updates on what I'm doing. If I'm going live on Twitch, or if I posted a new video, or if I see some interesting piece of news, I'll usually post about that. And then I am also now streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv. You guys can find me on there searching Zimmy Games. And I'm not sure, Boom, are we going to be streaming the remainder of the second Man of Dark Pictures anthology this week?
Yeah, not this Friday. Mrs. Boom, it actually surprised me. She's taking the day off, and we're actually going to be getting ready for not only Thanksgiving, but the Christmas holiday. So we got to get over to storage and take care of a few things. So not this particular Friday, but we will be back at it potentially the following. The following Friday is Black Friday. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it. It may be 2 weeks before me and Boom are both on there, and you can just watch me scream and be terrified at Little Hope. But I do stream other things on there, like Call of Duty and just a variety of games on there. So feel free to stop by and chat and say hello next time you see me on streaming on Twitch.tv.
Yeah, and listen, folks, it's been great. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the ridiculous amount of super chats that came in this evening, or this afternoon. I said this evening. My goodness, the generosity is just unbelievable, and it's really. And I say this all the time, not to sound facetious. It is extremely humbling. I don't expect to come into these shows to get super chats, but I do want you to know that they are being reinvested into this community with bigger giveaways, and that's how we were able to do the big one for the launch of the consoles. We took the money away and we just waited and sat on it, and we were able to get everyone to have that many prizes. And again, Christmas with Boom is going to be just as spectacular. And again, it's our way of giving back to this community that has been so generous to this particular channel, not only monetarily, but with the support. And that's a big deal. I'm over 7,000 subs, and it's well more than I thought I was going to have in 2020. And of course, the magic number next is 10,000, so I can start selling some merch on my YouTube channel. And I am working with some people behind the scenes for design, some new designs. And we'll be once I hit the 10K, we'll be pushing those new designs for a lot of the shows that you know and love. And like I said, I want to thank everybody for the support. JD Gamer drops another super chat of $2 and says, almost 400 in the chat. Drop a like, folks. Yes, please, if you are enjoying it. Listen, listen. I understand that when I talk about Halo, I piss people off. And if that in fact is the case, I hear you, man. I'm not dumping on Halo because I'm looking to get clicks. It's just my opinion. I'm a disappointed gamer because I really wanted Halo at launch. It's not here. I want Halo to be great, and I'm going to keep banging this drum until they make it great. Hopefully, this Halo Infinite is going to be great. But if you didn't like the banter, then hit the thumbs down button. What can I tell you? But if you did enjoy the adult-like conversation that me and Zemi have, and I think we have a tremendous dynamic bouncing off one another to keep you here entertained for 2 hours, and you are enjoying the show, please consider subscribing if you're not subscribed. And at the least, before you get out of here, hit the damn like button. Trust me, I'm not going to send you a bill in the mail. You're not going to get a bill from Boom saying you owe me $5 for hitting the like button. It's free. And it does help this channel grow. And if you want to see this grow like RDX has, or like the Xbox 2 or Kid Smooth's incredible show, then the way that you can help me is by hitting the, of course, thumbs up button. It gets me into the algorithm that I don't think anyone actually understands with YouTube, and it does help this channel grow. So everyone, listen, I'm going to close out the show with something that's important to me. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught me, and he taught me a lot. But these two particular quotes that I use made me a better police officer, but more importantly, made me a better human being. And that's who I am today. He says this: treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, and I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you this upcoming Thursday on the new episode of the Xbox Factor podcast. Take care, everyone, and have a great day.